The aroma of simmering soup filled the kitchen, providing a brief moment of solace from the relentless demands of the day. I was stirring the pot, lost in thought, when Joshua's voice echoed through the house, shattering the temporary peace. "Camila, can you go see Mom today?" His tone was more pleading than demanding, but it still grated on my nerves. I set the wooden spoon down with a sigh and turned towards the living room. "Joshua, I was just there yesterday. She wants to see you, not me." Joshua appeared in the doorway, his shoulders slumped, a tired expression etched on his face. "I'm exhausted, Camila. Work has been crazy, and I can't deal with her demands right now." "She's your mother, Joshua. She misses you," I said, crossing my arms. The frustration in my voice was unmistakable. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as his way of stalling. "She misses the idea of me," he muttered, almost to himself before slumping onto the couch. "You're better at handling her. Please, just this once." I stared at him, my mind racing with all the times I had been the one to visit Zoe, to listen to her complaints and soothe her worries. This wasn't the first time we had this conversation, and it wouldn't be the last. Resigned, I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door and turned back to him. "Joshua, this isn't fair. You know she needs you, not just me. You can't keep pushing this onto my shoulders," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and sadness. He looked up, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I know, Camila. I can't handle it right now. I promise I'll go next time." I bit back a retort, knowing it would only lead to another argument. "Fine, but next time you need to follow through." He nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you, Camila. I owe you." As I walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling of resentment bubbling inside me. I loved Joshua, but his avoidance of his mother's needs was putting a strain on our relationship. The drive to the hospital was short, but it felt longer than usual. My mind was occupied with thoughts of Zoe and her relentless need for attention. Joshua had always been her golden boy, the center of her universe. She had raised him alone after his father left, and now, in her old age, she clung to him desperately. When I arrived at Zoe's room, she was sitting up in bed, a magazine in her lap. Her face lit up when she saw me, but her eyes quickly scanned the doorway for Joshua. "Camila, dear, where's Joshua?" she asked, her voice tinged with disappointment. "He couldn't make it today, Zoe. He's busy with work," I replied, forcing a smile. Her face fell, but she quickly masked her disappointment with a tight-lipped smile. "Of course he is. Busy man. Well, sit down, dear. Tell me how you've been." I sat by her bed, taking her hand in mine. "I've been all right, Zoe. Just busy with work and keeping the house in order. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, you know, the usual aches and pains. The doctors say I need to rest more, but it's hard when all I can think about is Joshua," she said, her eyes filling with tears. I squeezed her hand gently. "He loves you, Zoe. He's just overwhelmed with work right now. They'll come to see you soon." She nodded, her eyes drifting to the window. "I hope so. I miss him so much." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her longing hanging heavy in the air. I could feel her pain, her desperation to see her son, and it tugged at my heartstrings. Despite her flaws and her often overbearing nature, Zoe was a mother who loved her son deeply. "Tell me, Camila," she said suddenly, turning back to me. "How is Joshua really doing? He doesn't tell me much when we talk on the phone." I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "He's stressed, Zoe. Work has been demanding, and it's taking a toll on him." She sighed, shaking her head. "I wish you would let me help. I feel so useless here, just lying in this bed." "You're not useless, Zoe. You're his mother, and he loves you. Just give him some time to sort things out," I said, trying to offer some comfort. She smiled weakly. "Thank you, Camila. You're a good wife to him. I don't know what he would do without you." As I drove home that evening, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Zoe's longing for Joshua, Joshua's avoidance of his responsibilities, and my own burden of trying to keep everything together. It was all becoming too much. But I knew I had to keep going for both of them, and for myself. The drive to the hospital felt longer than usual, the weight of the familiar routine pressing down on me. I parked the car and took a deep breath before heading inside, preparing myself for another visit with Zoe. As I walked through the hospital corridors, I couldn't help but think about the dynamic between Joshua and his mother. When I reached Zoe's room, I knocked lightly on the door before entering. She was sitting up in bed, her thinning hair neatly combed, a magazine open on her lap. Her face brightened when she saw me, but I noticed the quick flicker of disappointment when she realized Joshua wasn't with me. "Camila, dear, come in," she said, her voice wavering with a mix of joy and sadness. "Where's Joshua? I was hoping he'd come today." I forced a smile, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "He wanted to, Zoe, but work has been really demanding lately. He sends his love, though." Zoe's face fell, and she sighed deeply. "Always busy, that boy. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers he has a mother." I reached out and took her hand, feeling the frailness of her skin. He remembers Zoe. He talks about you all the time. He's just trying to manage everything on his plate. She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I miss him so much, Camila. I know I can be a bit demanding, but I just want to see him to know he's okay. I understand Zoe, and he will come. He just needs a little time, I reassured her, hoping my words would offer some comfort. She nodded, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. Thank you, dear. I know I'm a handful, but you're always so patient with me. I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. It's no trouble, Zoe. Your family. We sat in silence for a moment, the quiet hum of the hospital room enveloping us. I could see the loneliness in her eyes, the deep longing for the son she had raised and loved so fiercely. Zoe had always been a strong woman, but age and illness had taken their toll, leaving her vulnerable and dependent. You think he's happy? She asked suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. I was taken aback by the question. What do you mean? Joshua. Do you think he's happy with his life? With his job with you? She looked at me intently, as if searching for answers in my face. I think he's stressed right now, but he's happy, Zoe. He loves his work and he loves me. We're just going through a rough patch, I said, hoping to alleviate her concerns. She sighed, leaning back against the pillows. I worry about him. He's always been so focused, so driven. I wonder if he ever takes time for himself. He tries, Zoe. It's just hard with everything going on, I replied softly. I know. I just wish I could do more for him, she said, her voice filled with regret. You've done so much already. You raised him, gave him everything you could. He knows that even if he doesn't always show it, I said, trying to comfort her. Zoe smiled weakly, the lines on her face deepening. Thank you, Camila. You're a good daughter-in-law. I don't know what I would do without you. As I left the hospital that day, her words echoed in my mind. Zoe's expectations for Joshua were high, born out of years of sacrifice and love. She wanted the best for him, but her constant need for attention was becoming a burden. Balancing her needs with Joshua's reluctance to visit was a challenge, one that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I drove home in silence, the weight of Zoe's words and Joshua's avoidance pressing down on me. I loved them both, but I couldn't help but feel caught in the middle, struggling to keep everything together. As I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for another evening of navigating the delicate balance between caring for Zoe and supporting Joshua. Inside, I found Joshua sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop open in front of him. He looked up as I entered, a weary smile on his face. How's Mom? He asked, his voice tinged with guilt. She misses you, Joshua. She really needs to see you, I said, setting my bag down and sitting across from him. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, Camila. I can't handle it right now. Work is overwhelming. I understand, but she's your mother. She's not asking for much, just a little of your time, I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. I know, he muttered, rubbing his temples. I'll try to go next week. You said that last week, I replied softly. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and remorse. I'll make it happen, Camila. I promise. I nodded, knowing that promises were easier made than kept. Okay, Joshua, she needs you. Just remember that. As I walked into the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling of being caught in an endless cycle, one that demanded more from me than I felt capable of giving. But for the sake of both Zoe and Joshua, I had to keep trying. The house was quiet, the soft ticking of the clock the only sound as I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in my hands. Joshua had gone to bed early, exhausted from another long day at work. I sipped my tea slowly, allowing my mind to wander over the events of the past few weeks. Visiting Zoe had become a regular part of my routine, a responsibility that Joshua seemed increasingly eager to shirk. I understood his stress and the demands of his job, but his reluctance to visit his mother was beginning to create a rift between us. I felt like I was the only one holding everything together, the only one who saw how much Zoe needed him. As I sat there, I couldn't help but reflect on our marriage and the traditional gender roles that had defined our relationship from the beginning. Joshua was the breadwinner and I was the homemaker, despite the fact that I also had a job. It was an unspoken agreement, one that we had both accepted, but it was starting to wear on me. I thought back to the early days of our relationship when everything seemed so much simpler. We had met in college, both of us young and full of dreams. Joshua had always been ambitious, determined to build a successful career, while I had been content to support him, believing that my own dreams could wait. But now, years later, I was beginning to question that decision. The sound of footsteps interrupted my thoughts, and I looked up to see Joshua standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Can't sleep? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He shook his head, coming to sit beside me. No, I've got too much on my mind. I reached out and took his hand, feeling the tension in his grip. Want to talk about it? He sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's work, mostly. but also everything with Mom. I feel guilty, Camila. I know I should be visiting her more, but I just can't seem to find the time. I understand, Joshua, but she really needs you right now. She misses you, I said gently. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I miss her too. I don't know how to balance everything. I squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his words. We'll figure it out together. But you need to make an effort. She's not going to be around forever. He nodded, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and determination. I will, Camila. I promise. As we sat there in the quiet of the kitchen, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things could change. Maybe we could find a way to balance our responsibilities and still be there for each other. The next morning, I woke up early, determined to make a start on the endless list of chores that awaited me. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being overwhelmed. The house was always in need of cleaning, the laundry was never ending, and there were errands to run. It felt like I was constantly spinning plates, trying to keep everything from crashing down around me. Later that day, while folding laundry, I found myself reflecting on my own desires and dreams. I had always wanted to become a writer, tell stories that would touch people's hearts. But those dreams had been put on hold, overshadowed by the demands of everyday life. Camila, you're always so busy, my friend Sarah had said to me just last week. When do you ever find time for yourself? I had laughed it off at the time, but her words had stayed with me. When did I find time for myself? Between work, taking care of the house, and visiting Zoe, there was little time left for anything else. I felt like I was losing myself, my dreams slipping further and further away. That evening, as I prepared dinner, Joshua walked into the kitchen, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks. He leaned against the counter, watching me work. Smells good, he said, a small smile playing on his lips. Thanks, I replied, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest at the sight of his smile. How was your day? Busy, as usual. But I make some time to call Mom, he said, his eyes meeting mine. You good? I asked, surprised and pleased. Yeah, we had a good talk. I told her I'd visit this weekend, he said, his smile widening. That's great, Joshua. She'll be so happy, I said, feeling a surge of relief. He came over and wrapped his arms around me, resting his chin on my shoulder. Thank you, Camila, for everything. I know I haven't been easy to live with lately. I turned in his arms, looking up at him. We're in this together, remember? We'll get through it. He nodded, leaning down to kiss me softly. I know, and I'm going to make more of an effort, I promise. As we stood there, holding each other in the kitchen, I felt a sense of hope and renewal. We were facing challenges, but we were also finding our way through them. And maybe, just maybe, I could start to carve out some time for myself to pursue my own dreams while still supporting Joshua and caring for Zoe. Later that night, as I lay in bed beside Joshua, I made a silent promise to myself. I would find a way to balance my responsibilities with my own desires. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew it was necessary for my own sanity and for the future of our family. The next day, as I visited Zoe, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was sitting up in bed, a smile on her face as I walked in. Camila, dear, come in, come in. I have so much to tell you, she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I sat down beside her, taking her hand in mine. What's got you so excited, Zoe? Joshua called me yesterday. He said he's coming to visit this weekend, she said, her smile widening. That's wonderful, Zoe. He's really looking forward to seeing you, I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. I can't wait. I've missed him so much, she said, her eyes filling with tears. As I sat with her, listening to her talk about her plans for Joshua's visit, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to find a way to balance everything. For Zoe, for Joshua, and for myself. The sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting a warm glow on the room as I settled into the chair next to Zoe's bed. She was propped up against a stack of pillows, her frail hands resting on a well-worn photo album. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, and I could see a glimmer of something in her eyes, excitement perhaps, or nostalgia. Zoe, you look like you're ready to share a secret, I said with a smile, trying to lighten the mood. She chuckled softly, patting the album beside her. Oh, Camila, I suppose you could say that. I've been thinking a lot about the past lately. There are things I've never really talked about, not even with Joshua. I leaned in, curiosity piqued. I'd love to hear about it, Zoe. Whatever you want to share. Zoe opened the album, revealing a collection of black and white photographs. She picked up a picture of a young woman in a theater costume, her face alight with hope and ambition. This is me many years ago, Zoe said, her voice tinged with a mix of pride and sorrow. I had dreams of becoming an actress. I even auditioned for a few roles. I studied the photograph, recognizing the same determined look in Zoe's younger self that I saw in her now. You look so happy, Zoe. What happened? She sighed, tracing the outline of the photo with her finger. Life happened. I faced countless rejections, and the only role I was offered was as an extra. It wasn't what I had hoped for, so I returned home and got a job at the Creative Center. That's where I met Joshua's father. Zoe's eyes softened as she spoke about Joshua's father, and I could see the love and regret in her expression. He was a kind man, but our life together wasn't always easy. We had Joshua when I was 40. He was our miracle, the light of our lives. I listened intently, feeling a deeper connection to Zoe as she shared her story. It must have been challenging raising a child at that age. It was, Zoe admitted, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Joshua was my world. I poured all my love and dreams into him. Maybe I held on too tightly, relied on him too much. I reached out and squeezed her hand. You did the best you could, Zoe. Joshua knows that. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I hope so. I just want him to have everything I didn't. As we sat together, I realized how much Zoe's past had shaped her, and by extension, shaped Joshua. Her fears, her dreams, her sacrifices, they had all played a part in the man he had become. Zoe, Joshua loves you deeply. You may not show it the way you want, but he does, I said softly, hoping to reassure her. I know, Camila, I just wish I could see him more, she said, wiping away a tear. The door opened and a nurse walked in, checking Zoe's charts and adjusting her IV. I watched as Zoe's expression softened, the moment of vulnerability passing. Thank you for listening, Camila. It means a lot to me, Zoe said once the nurse had left. Anytime, Zoe. I'm here for you, I replied, feeling a renewed sense of commitment to helping her. Later that evening, back at home, I found myself lost in thought. Zoe's story had given me a new perspective on Joshua and our relationship. I saw now how much he had been shaped by his mother's love and expectations, and how that had influenced his reluctance to visit her. Joshua walked into the room looking tired but pleased. Dinner smells great, Camila. Thanks, it's almost ready, I replied, setting the table. He sat down, glancing at me. How was your visit with Mom today? It was good. She shared a lot about her past. Things I never knew, I said, watching his reaction. Joshua looked intrigued. Really? Like what? She talked about her dreams of being an actress and how she met your father, I said. It made me understand her and you a lot better. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. She's always been a bit of a mystery to me, too. I guess I never took the time to really ask her about her life. I reached across the table and took his hand. Maybe it's not too late to start. She loves you so much, Joshua. I know, he said, squeezing my hand. I need to make more of an effort, for her and for us. As we shared dinner, I felt a sense of hope. We were uncovering the past, not just Zoe's, but our own as well. It was a journey of understanding and healing, one that I hoped would bring us closer together. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my own dreams and the sacrifices I had made. Zoe's story had reminded me of the importance of not losing sight of myself, even as I cared for others. I resolved to start making time for my own passions, to find a balance between my responsibilities and my desires. The next day, I visited Zoe again, this time bringing a small notebook and pen. Zoe, I've been thinking. You have so many wonderful stories. How would you feel about writing them down? Her eyes lit up with excitement. I'd love that, Camila. But I'm not much of a writer. I can help you, I said, handing her the notebook. We can do it together. She smiled, taking the notebook from me. That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Camila. As we began to write, I felt a sense of fulfillment. We were uncovering the past, not just for Zoe, but for ourselves. It was a journey of healing and understanding, one that I hoped would bring us all closer together. And in the process, I was finding my own voice, rediscovering my own dreams. It was a journey I was ready to embrace one step at a time. The days following my conversation with Zoe were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a renewed sense of connection to her and a deeper understanding of Joshua, but it didn't erase the strain in our relationship. The tension between us seemed to linger, a silent presence in our home. One evening, as Joshua and I sat down to dinner, the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. I decided it was time to address the growing rift between us. Joshua, we need to talk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up from his plate, his expression wary. About what? About us? About your mother? About everything, I replied, taking a deep breath. I've been feeling so overwhelmed lately, and I don't think we're really addressing the issues between us. He sighed, pushing his plate away. I know, Camila. I've been avoiding it, hoping things would just get better on their own. Well, they're not, I said bluntly. I feel like I'm shouldering all the responsibilities alone. Your mother needs you, Joshua. I need you. Joshua rubbed his temples, a look of frustration crossing his face. I'm trying, Camila. I really am. But work is stressful, and I just don't have the energy to deal with Mom's demands. I understand that work is tough, but this is your family, I insisted. We can't just ignore these problems and hope they'll go away. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. It's not that simple. Mom's always been difficult. She expects so much from me, and I don't know how to handle it. She loves you, Joshua. She just wants to feel close to you, I said softly. I think you need to start making an effort for her sake and for ours. Joshua remained silent, his expression conflicted. I reached across the table and took his hand, trying to convey my support. We're in this together, I said gently, but I can't do it alone. We need to communicate better, to support each other more. He nodded slowly, squeezing my hand. You're right, Camilla. I've been selfish and I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. As the days passed, Joshua made more of an effort to visit Zoe, and our relationship began to show signs of improvement. But the strain wasn't entirely gone. There were still moments of tension, times when old habits and unresolved issues resurfaced. One afternoon, I came home from work to find Joshua sitting on the couch, his face buried in his hands. I sat down beside him, my heart sinking at the sight of his distress. What's wrong? I asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. It's work, he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. They're pushing me to take on more projects, and I don't know how much longer I can keep up. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. Have you talked to your boss about it? He shook his head. No, I don't want to seem weak or incapable. Joshua, you're not weak. It's okay to ask for help when you need it, I said firmly. Maybe it's time to set some boundaries at work so you can have more energy for us and for your mom. He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. You're right, Camilla. I'll talk to my boss tomorrow. The next day, Joshua came home with a relieved expression. I talked to my boss, he said, a hint of a smile on his lips. He understood and agreed to lighten my load a bit. That's great news, I said, feeling a surge of hope. Maybe now we can focus on rebuilding our relationship. As we sat down for dinner that evening, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. We were taking small steps toward healing, both with Zoe and with each other. It wasn't going to be easy, but I believed we could make it work. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Joshua turned to me, his expression serious. Camilla, I want to thank you for everything you've done. For being there for my mom, for supporting me. I know it hasn't been easy. I smiled, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. We're a team, Joshua. We'll get through this together. He nodded, pulling me close. I love you, Camilla, and I promise to do better. As we held each other, I felt a sense of peace. Our relationship had been strained, but we were working through it, one step at a time. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The following weeks were a test of balance and patience. Between Zoe's needs, Joshua's work stress, and my own job, I often felt like a tightrope walker, teetering on the edge of exhaustion. Yet there was a newfound sense of hope and determination in our home, a belief that we could find our footing together. One morning, as I prepared breakfast, Joshua entered the kitchen, looking more rested than he had in weeks. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Good morning, he murmured, his breath warm against my neck. Good morning, I replied, smiling. How did you sleep? Better, he said, kissing my cheek. Thank you for encouraging me to talk to my boss. It's made a huge difference. I'm glad to hear that, I said, turning to face him. We've still got a lot to juggle, but I think we're on the right track. As we ate breakfast, I shared my plans for the day. I'm visiting Zoe this afternoon. She wants to continue working on her memoir. Joshua nodded, looking thoughtful. I'll come by after work. I want to spend more time with her, too. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That means a lot to her, Joshua, and to me. Later that day, I arrived at the hospital to find Zoe sitting up in bed, the notebook and pen I had given her resting on her lap. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. Camilla, I've been thinking about what to write next, she said, her voice filled with excitement. There's so much I want to share. I'm here to help Zoe, I said, settling into the chair beside her. Let's start with whatever feels most important to you. As Zoe began to recount her memories, I noticed a new clarity in her eyes, a sense of purpose that had been missing before. She spoke about her childhood, her dreams of becoming an actress, and her early years with Joshua's father. You know, Camilla, I never expected my life to turn out the way it did, Zoe said, her voice softening. But I've come to realize that even the unfulfilled dreams and the difficult times shaped who I am. I think you've had a remarkable life, Zoe, I said sincerely, and your story is worth telling. Just then, Joshua walked in, carrying a bouquet of flowers. Hey, Mom. Hey, Camilla, he greeted us, placing the flowers in a vase on the windowsill. Joshua, you're just in time, Zoe said, her face brightening. I was about to tell Camilla about the time you were born. Joshua pulled up a chair, his expression softening. I'd love to hear that story again. Zoe smiled, her eyes sparkling with emotion. You were my miracle baby, Joshua. I was 40 years old and I had almost given up hope of having children, but then you came along and my world changed completely. Joshua listened intently, his eyes misting over as Zoe recounted his birth and early years. It was a touching moment, and I felt a deep sense of connection between the three of us. After our visit, as Joshua and I walked back to the car, he turned to me, his expression serious. "Camilla, thank you for helping Mom with her memoir. It's given her a new lease on life." "I'm happy to do it, Joshua," I said. "It's been enlightening for me, too. I learned so much about her and about you." He nodded, a look of gratitude in his eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't see it before. How much she needed this and how much you've been doing." "It's never too late to start making things right," I said, smiling at him. "We're a team, remember?" As we drove home, I thought about the delicate balance we were trying to achieve. It wasn't just about managing responsibilities. It was about nurturing our relationships and supporting each other through the challenges. The next day, I decided to take a small step toward reclaiming my own dreams. After work, I enrolled in an evening painting class. It was something I had always wanted to do, but had put off for years. When I told Joshua about it, he looked genuinely pleased. "That's great, Camilla," he said, giving me a hug. "You deserve to do something for yourself." The first class was exhilarating. As I dipped my brush into vibrant colors and let my creativity flow, I felt a sense of joy and fulfillment that had been missing for a long time. It reminded me that while caring for others was important, so was taking care of myself. When I returned home, Joshua was waiting for me with a glass of wine and a proud smile. "How was it?" "Wonderful," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thank you for supporting me." "Always," he replied, clinking his glass against mine. "To new beginnings." As the weeks passed, we continued to find our balance. Joshua made more time for Zoe, who seemed to thrive on our visits and her writing project. I discovered new passions and rekindled old ones, feeling more fulfilled and energized. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Joshua took my hand in his. "Camilla, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about us and what we want." I looked at him, feeling a sense of anticipation. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want us to keep growing together, to support each other's dreams and to build a life we're both proud of," he said, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I want that too, Joshua," I said, feeling a swell of emotion. "We've come a long way and I believe we can keep moving forward." He smiled, pulling me close. "We're a team, Camilla, and together we can handle anything." As we watched the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. Balancing acts were never easy, but with love, understanding, and mutual support, we were finding our way, one step at a time.